Hello dear students, welcome in this online session of 9th standard SS. Today the lesson which we are going to refer is already mentioned by me over the blackboard. So this is world after 1945. Now see students, this is the part number 1. In this lecture we are going to learn about the pages of the history which is full of the innumerable facts and also war and many more things. So I hope you are ready for this lecture, and I hope if you have not already studied the previous chapters of this series of the lessons of World War I, World War II and all, you must go and see those videos also. Therefore you can get all the kinds of information and knowledge too. So continuing in this lecture, page number 39 and the lesson number 6, 9th SS, World after 1945. The first page number itself says that the pages of the history are full with the innumerable thoughts of the war. Not only thoughts of the war, it is actually full with the war and all. So India in the world actually was remaining in the neutral position, but if we talk about the most other destructive wars and all, then we will always be remembering the modern war, ancient war and the medieval war too. It means the First and the Second World War. So the League of the Nation was formed, as I already told you and I have already explained you in the previous chapter, that the League of the Nation was formed with the purpose of establishing permanent peace and security in the world, but it was not limited for a time period, so it was actually failed. Apart from that, if you go more further, then we can say in the 1939 the World War II broke out, and therefore the disturbance of the states and the horror of the World War II was actually persecuted over the human beings till now. And at once we can say we were making effort to make independence also. In India it was the thought of independence going on. In India we were fighting for the independence, so we were fighting our own fight. We were not emerging in any other's fight as well. We were not supporting any of the nations, neither allied nation nor the Axis nation. Therefore we can say that this all resulted in establishment of the UN, that was 24th of the October 1945. So the first topic starts here, that after the starting of the United Nations Chartered or United Nation Organization, what was it is including? It was including in the part. Okay, so this will bring our first topic of the today's lecture, the United Nations Charter. So now we are going to refer the United Nation Charter. Okay, now United Nations Charter says that the United Nations Charter is starting with the preamble, and same it is explaining like United Nations goals and all. Okay, the same as we can say all the thoughts and queries are given below. Now the first itself says that there should be determination. Which kind of determination? See, whenever we are talking about this kinds of chartered and all, then we need to understand we must determine our thoughts and we must determine our queries. We must determine that why this organization is made up of. Okay, so we can go with the first determination, that is for the saving of the future generation from the ages and ages, from the pangs of the wars and all destructive waves of the war. Here emphasis has been laid that responsibilities, tolerance, mutuality, understanding and also mutual understanding in the world peace. It means that first rule of the United Nations Charter was that we need to go with the universal brotherhood, universal peace and also in the progressive prospectus mode. Second one says that emphasis has been laid to developing the tolerance mutually so that world develops socially. If you actually go with the mutual understanding and with the social ecological balance and everything could be in a balanced level, obviously slowly the society will be also developing out. Now this is not it. If we go more in the detail, then third topic says that economy as well as social and therefore cultural purpose should be also solved out. Conflicts should be also solved out. Literally we can say United Nations is also working over the human rights and all sense from the ancient time on the basis of freedom, which is like given to be everybody, that is the irrespective caste, language, gender or religion should not be discriminated or separated. We all should be living together very harmoniously. Now the fourth topic says that lastly appeal must be done for all the nations for the cooperation to achieve this kinds of object. Unless the nations are not participating in this kinds of beautiful segment of the United Nations Charter, there will be no any kind of amendment, neither peace nor success. So this is how we can say that the United Nations Charter were actually mentioning this kinds of fact, detail and theories too. Now this is not it. See, whenever United Nations Charter, like a kind of a organization is coming out, or a kind of a segment is coming out to go and make the world on the developed level, or to go or and make the whole of the we can say humanity or the development level, then we can say that okay, it is the general condition where we need to also be supportive towards that. So the second thought comes that okay, why was this kinds of things was organized? Because actually the war was going in. Okay, so we'll talk about one of the war, that is the Cold War. Now you must be knowing about the season cold. How cold is the season? Everything is silent. See, I'm not going to explain you according to the season, but I'm going to explain you the definition related to the season. That is, what is Cold War? Cold War means the war which was not done on a large ammunition basis. It was done internally, conflictually. It means politically, dramatically, diplomatically. This kinds of supremacy was used at the time of the Cold War. It means it was not an outbreak, but internally it was breaking down. So now comes the Cold War, and I also explain you that what is the reason behind the Cold War, which held in 1945 and lasted till 1962. So the second topic is Cold War. Okay, 1945 to 1962. Okay, so this thing you need to remember out here. Now see, as I am reading here, that Cold War is actually a war at that time that was actually resulting to create the American and Russian superpower as the bloc, while taking the place of England and France. In the England and France, the Russia and America were getting the basic ammunition centers. They were building up their machinery developments and all. Policies were made out and all. So that is how we can say America and Russia established supremacy over this world and emerged as the superpower bloc till the Second World War. So the power was centralized between two poles. Now, which kind of two poles were there? See, generally powers were centralized in the two poles. One was the American pole, one was the Russian poles, and that is how we can say the war was centralized between the two poles, America and Russia. They both became, after friend to foe, means they both became enemies of each other, rivals of each other, competitors of each other. So that's how this power block came into the outbreak here. That was the name given to the war internally as the Cold War phrase. So at the various incidents, both the powers almost came into the confliction with each other. It means they both came to clash each other, but before clashing, somehow they were resolving their problems. So that was the condition related to the Cold War. See, you need to understand very clearly that Cold War means the war which is internally done, It is not like outbreaking of the war, but internally they are fighting. They are fighting with the they're fighting with the political parties, they're fighting with the parties, they're fighting with the business. Internally they are fighting. Okay, so therefore there was a basic change in the relationship between two power blocks that was world was also witnessing. America and the Soviet Union, who had allied fought with the Nazi Germany and the fascist Italy party, though now actually it was turning towards the Britain, Berlin and all. So Britain and France also had emerged victoriously. They were also coming with the more and more powerful compatibility and all. And later we can say Germany and Italy and Japan not only lost the war in this kinds of segment, but they were actually ruined economically. So politically and militarily also they were ruined out. So they were needing the help. So in the seeking of the help, we can say Germany was actually joining to the eastern countries like Australia, Albania, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, or we can say Baltic states too. So that's how later on they gave the reins power to the other countries like communist parties and all, and they did this continuing. They continuing this kinds of process since the centuries and centuries ago, till the centuries and centuries. So that is how we can say during the 1949, this whole of the dramatic change came here, and as I am telling you that the Cold War was actually going on the peak level, and that was actually giving the coincidence, or the we can say by the condition a nuclear test weapon was also needing to be start out here. So the Soviet Union directly challenged the most monopolist mineral we can say in the nuclear power to the America, and same as meanwhile democratic country gradually established this power, this European countries also in a way that liberty or the government, liberal government must be working out, and that's how they can be also working with the nuclear test weapon. See here I would like to tell you that nuclear test weapon is banned in our country, in the world also. After the World War it it is actually banned. So if you are really thinking that a nuclear test weapon must be a good kind of weapon, so you are actually wrong. See, nuclear test and the weapon of the keeping the weapon or testing the weapon, developing the weapon is not a legal procedure since from the 1945. But then also many of the countries have came forward, they have tested also, and they have actually made the contribution towards the ammunition war. So that's how we can say, okay, here the British and American people joining the nuclear stations means they were trying to make the more and more dangerous lethal weapons so that they can kill more people and they can establish the supremacy. Meanwhile, the world was distributed into the army group. It means the whole of the world was distributed into the army groups. Now, what was the army groups? NATO, CETO, CANTO. Okay, I'll explain you the full form of this also. So, on one of the most side, if I talk about the conflict of the ideological thinking was mutually understood and disturbed and sensed with the doubt on the faces, intention with the rival group. One side, we can say group 1 was creating, another side group B means group A was creating. Okay, group A, group B, or 1, group 2. So owing the fear of both the nations or born out with the war, mutual disturbance was actually going into the doubts. Means now nobody was actually understanding mutual phrases, and they all were making a doubt upon each other. So that is how it led to inspire by India that Western countries, democratic countries on the northern Atlantic Ocean established first of all the new party, okay, that was named as NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, okay, in the April 1949. So you must remember the date, that is the group, okay, that is 1949 NATO. You should remember this date, okay. Same as if you go more further, thereafter to the establishment of the military organization, NATO came forward, and laterly we can say to protect southeastern countries from the outbreak of the war. The Soviet Union Communist Party also established to make their parties, and also America and England also established military organizations in 1945, that is known as SEATO. It means Southeastern Asiatic Treaty Organization, okay, 1945 SEATO. Then here okay, so these are the two power blocks basically. So we were having more about that now. If I talk about one more, that is CANTO, Central Asia Treaty Organization, one of the more organization that was actually named as CANTO, as we can say in the middle of the eastern countries under the leadership and inspiration of England. Here was an Arab country also joining the CANTO, and that's how America took over its leadership. Means under the League of America, CANTO was also organized, and Arabian countries were also helping these kinds of states. So that's how we can say, like, UN policy was about to be finished. So UN thought that we need to go with the armament to the disarmament policy. But no any country, no any supremacy was actually thinking about UN. They all were actually blindly believing on their own thought of mythology and their own thought of concept, and also they were thinking that how can we go and fight the war and win the more and more nations today itself. So that's how we can say armament, disarmament, nuclear as well as weapon creation and its application was started. So the next topic is armament, disarmament, nuclear, weapon creation and the application, how it started. To see, one thing we need to understand, from the Cold War, it was meant for the domination over the world. It means Cold War was the basic theme where most of the country came forward to on the rule of domination status. Domination means to rule. Okay, so most of the countries were thinking to rule other countries, and that's how we can say competition. Generally, competition among the superpower increased, and for the sake of domination, generally, armament race was given high priority. देखो बच्चों, if you don't know the meaning of armament policy, it means that making of lethal weapons, making of dangerous missiles. Okay, if one country is making the missile, another will also do, third will also do, fourth will also do. Now if one is testing, another will also test. It means that it was a race between the countries to make the armament policy on a top level. It means to go with the heavy demand of machineries, heavy demand of weapons and heavy demand of the ammunition, we can say lethal killing machineries and all. So America declared blockade at the time with the communist Cuba, and that was also known as Cuban crisis. But why it was known as Cuban crisis? See, to defend Cuba against the superpower threatened to each other nuclear weapon with that, Russia and America came forward on the Caribbean Sea. Now they both were about to fight with each other, but due to some kinds of confliction, the fight was dismissed, and literally they talk on the hotline. So it was very important episode of the politics where the Cuban crisis it was actually named as. So this question is always coming in the exam. Okay, what is Cuban crisis? So you must be remembering about the Cuban crisis, okay, how it was done, what was the theory. Now we'll be moving towards the next topic, that is the rise of independent nations in Asia. Now what is rise of independent nation? See, rise of independent nation in Asia. Okay, rise of independent nation in Asia. So what was that? That was actually a condition where we can say India was achieving independence in 1947 along with the freedom struggle, and literally we can understand owing the British policy divide and rule and creation of the regions, the country was divided into two nations, namely India and Pakistan. It means what the Britishers did was faced by us now also till the date also, and in the ancient time we divided Pakistan, we divided India. Actually we not divided, but the people who were trying to go on a separate league, they needed to divide India from India to Pakistan. Even they divided literally Bangladesh also. So that's how we can say the British countries like Sri Lanka, okay, or the abroad countries, if we talk about the British, but we can say against the British countries like Sri Lanka, Myanmar got independence in 1940 or just after 1 year from our independence. And in the case of Indonesia, the United Nations played the important role in the 1947 as well. Asian countries like Laos, then Cambodia, Vietnam too got independence after the India's independence. So this is telling you that Asian countries are also rising, and that's how I have wrote the topic, that is rise of the independent nation of Asia. Azad Desh, Asia, okay, that is I'm trying to make you understand. So second thing says that rise of independent nations in Africa also, same as Asia, will need to understand about the Africa too. So the Second World War actually proved to be the good omen for the enslaved nations like Africa. Good omen means a good sign. Second World War की वजह से Germany was weak enough and other countries were also weak enough. Japan did not got any league there, and Japan was also fighting with that. So that's how we can say कि most of the grip of the British and Eastern countries on the Africa was not tightened enough, and that's how Africa also at that time fought the war internally to win the league. So South Africa, Egypt were also independent at that time, and laterly we can say Second World War and the freedom struggle in the Asian countries inspired the African countries also, that was resulting in the tenure about 16 years from 1951 to 66. 40 small and large countries became free internationally, or we can say they became free from imperialistic rules and regulation. So they also made their own conspiracies. So this is how we can say that Africa also got the freedom. So next comes non-alignment movement. It means that the countries which were not supporting any of the power blocks, neither Russia nor America, they needed to make separate and equal distance from both of these countries, both of these two countries. So these countries were known as the non-aligned country, who were not supporting any of the nation in the war. It means neutral countries. Laterally we can say those neutral nations did not want to adopt any kind of ideological thinking, neither they were needing to support to get from any of the world superpower blocks, or we can say they were also not wishing to go around with them. So laterally we can say that first Prime Minister of India, that was Jawaharlal Nehru, then Indonesia Prime Minister, like it actually found the independent nation to establish their own supremacy. So if you talk about all the Asian nations or the American nations, then we will go first with the Indian Prime Minister that I was already telling you. Then the first Prime Minister who was Jawaharlal Nehru of India, Indonesia's first Prime Minister Sukarno, Egypt's first Prime Minister, and second, we can say Egypt's second President Gamal Abdel Nasser, as well as Ghana's first Prime Minister Kuwait, Namukar, and laterally we can say all of these joined these kinds of nations with the non-alignment policy. Laterally we can say in the support of this kinds of nation non-alignment policy council, 23 countries of the Asia and 6 countries of the Africa were present, and the organization was actually, this organization was actually found at the Belgrade in 1961, which is also known as NAM, that is non-aligned movement. Okay, so under the leadership of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, policy of the non-alignment movement was framed. It means the country which don't need to support any of the nation should go with the own thought of mythology. And literally NAM, that is non-alignment movement, that is NAM consisted the world most we can say authorized, or generally we can say most good amount of thoughts, because they were not killing anyone, neither they were accepting to kill from other also. So that is how under the leadership of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, this policy of non-alignment policy was framed, and NAM was completely under the leadership of Nehruji. So laterally we can say that according to that, the India was actually the world leader. Obviously Indian people were the world leader, they were having the qualities of the world leader. So Nehru believed that movement continues to be see the role of itself, and therefore non-alignment policy must be going on. So it was actually opposed in some of the foreign occupations and all, but social economical challenges facing members and state policies were somehow to be handled out. Now one thing we need to understand, today more than 100 countries are actually following on the non-alignment policy. It means that nobody is supporting to the war. So today more and more countries have joined this non-alignment policy. Even the United Nations Smith is actually, or United Nations we can say organization also thinking over the non-alignment policy only. It means that we should work together, but we should not fight together, we should not support to anyone whenever we are fighting. Because if this kinds of charter, if this kinds of rising of the Asian League, if this kinds of good amount of theory, if UN is presenting to us, it means UN is also thinking that everybody should be working with the aligned policy. But if anybody is going for the warfare illegally, then nobody should be following that aligned policy. Everybody should be going on the independent level. So that is how we can say today more and more countries have joined the non-alignment movement, and with the disintegration of the Lampur, that is with the disintegration of this kinds of other countries and all, this policy have faced some of the problems also since from the ancient times. So for the last 4 decades, 40 years, many incidents have happened with the disintegration of the Soviet Union also, Russian power blocks also, and America emerged into the power block, where we can say impartial policy was also declared minimum in the other countries and all. So in this situation, non-alignment movement played a very dominant role. Means the two power blocks who were actually going to fight with each other, Russia and the America, were actually getting powers from the support of India or support of other nations, but actually India was not supporting them. So same as other countries also took their hand from the alignment policy. So obviously they got a very kind of loose grip over the other countries and all, and therefore the war was not in their hand, and it was about to be going to the end. So the non-alignment policy was actually playing a domination status at that time. So that is how we can say non-alignment nations movement with the non-alignment policy were successful in contributing towards the world politics, world peace, and non-alignment movement was successful in showing off the moral impact, maintaining the world peace also. So that is how nationalism was also somehow safeguarded, as well as superpower adopting anti we can say attitude towards disarmament was also started. It means that the superpower like America and Russia, they were having some of the attitude to make the weapon, but now they're having attitude to leave the weapon and go with the peaceful security. So these are the basic things which I'm trying to explain in this lesson, and also I'm trying to make you understand that what is the policy of non-alignment, what is the policy of unification, what is the policy of the 1945 world after. I hope this lecture was interesting and easy to understand for you. If you go with the 1 or 2 times of the repetition of this lecture, this video, then obviously you're going to understand all the kinds of theories and topic. I'll meet you in the other part. This was part number 1. So see you in the part number 2. Till then, you can take care and keep revising so that you can learn also very, very beautifully.